So why am I doing an e-bike review on this channel? Am I having a midlife crisis? Am I selling out as a YouTuber? Probably a bit of both, but the real answer is much more simple. I've always wanted an e-bike and I finally got my hands on this thing, the Fiido Titan Fat Tire e-bike. They reached out to me a few weeks ago and asked if I'd be interested in testing and reviewing this e-bike. And honestly, it was one of the quickest hell yeah replies that I've made. I did receive it for free, but they didn't pay me anything to make this review. Take it as you will. The key idea behind this e-bike is that it's made for off-roading and for long-distance traveling. It's aimed at outdoors people who do bikepacking trips that last several days or even weeks and overnight stay in accommodations or campsites where an electrical outlet is available to charge the batteries. But before we do any testing, let's go over all the specs and the features. For starters, it is pretty heavy, weighing 37.6 kilos without any extra batteries. Now, if I live in an apartment, I could probably lift it all upstairs by myself, because for me it isn't that heavy, but I could see it being too heavy for some people, like for example my wife. Now, because this thing is so heavy, it needs to be very sturdy. So the good news is that if you're on the heavier side, you don't need to worry about it too much, because this thing is rated for 200 kilograms, 120 here on the seat and another 80 on the bike rack. And the bike rack is also built into the bike frame itself. So when you're bikepacking, you can put a lot of stuff on here. It comes with these huge 4-inch wide fat off-road tires, which allow you to drive it on pretty much any surface. And because this thing is meant to ride off-road and it's so heavy, it also comes with these hydraulic 4-piston disc brakes, which from my own experience work pretty well. It also comes with mud guards in the front and in the back. The front fork is hydraulic and also adjustable here on the top with a rotating switch. Moving on to the center of the bike, it has a wide and comfy seat and also a pretty big and sturdy kickstand here on the back. It comes with a big red reflector on the back, which also works as a brake light if you press the brakes, and also a big LED headlamp here on the front. One thing that I do have to note here is that this wire for the headlamp is too short. That's because if you bend the handlebar too much, the wire will become tensioned and it will pop out and damage it. It already happened 2 times for me. Here I popped out the connector so that you can see it. As you can see, it's already a bit bent. It's still working, but I imagine that it might break sometime in the future. So what Fiido needs to do is make this wire maybe 1, 2, 3 centimeters longer, and that should do the trick. The normal version comes with only a single battery hidden inside the frame underneath this cover. Normally the battery is locked and you cannot remove it. You can unlock it by entering a code on the screen. Or you can also unlock it through the Fiido app. They sent me the extended version, which has 2 additional batteries, 2 bags for protecting both of these batteries, and another bike rack that goes on the rear wheel for holding both of these batteries in place. For long distance bikepacking, you definitely want the extended version. It's a 700 watt-hour battery, and for me it took roughly 5 hours to charge it fully from a completely empty state. By the way, I was kind of blown away by how cheaply charging an electric bike actually is. So to charge this battery from empty to full, based on current electricity prices here in Italy, I need to spend just 8 cents. 8 cents to charge the whole battery. So I did some testing on my own, and when carrying both of these extra batteries, riding somewhat economically from a single battery, I got about 45 kilometers of range. So if we take that into account, for every 100 kilometers, I'm spending roughly 18 cents to charge this electric bike, and that's pretty much nothing. I also did another test, and on full throttle without pedaling pretty much at all, on a single battery I got a 28 kilometer range. So based on your riding style, on how economically you're riding, with 3 batteries you could get a range of 85 to 135 kilometers. Personally, I live in a very mountainous region, so honestly I get a pretty low range, but if I would live somewhere more flat, I wouldn't be surprised if I could get maybe 200 kilometers with all 3 batteries, maybe even a bit more. So it all really depends on where you live and how flat the terrain is. Another thing that makes it kind of unique is this torque sensor here at the center of the bike. Essentially, the way that it works is it senses how hard you're pressing here on the pedals. The harder you pedal, the more force will be applied to the motor. In the rear hub, it has a 750 watt motor, which is considered pretty powerful for an e-bike. The main downside with this is that there may be some additional legal requirements depending on where you live. For example, here in Italy, anything over 250 watts is pretty much considered as a scooter, which means that I need to get insurance for it, license plates, I can only use a motorcycle helmet when driving it, and I can only drive it on roads instead of trails because it's considered a motorized vehicle, not a bicycle. You can turn it on by long pressing the on and off button, or you can do the same thing through your phone. The M button switches between a more simplified overview screen and a more detailed screen that shows all the statistics from your current ride. It also has an electric horn, and also a button that switches on and off the headlights. And this is the most important button that you'll be using all the time to switch between different driving modes. Zero basically won't give you any pedal assist. Eco will give you light pedal assist, and you usually use it on flat paved roads. And if you go all the way up to Turbo Plus, then it will give you the maximum amount of pedal assist, and you usually use it on very steep trails. To use the pedal assist mode, simply select one of the 5 assist modes and start pedaling. Regardless of which pedal assist mode you use, as long as it's not zero, you can also use it in full throttle mode simply by pressing this lever. Maybe you noticed that it didn't go higher than 25 kilometers per hour. That's because currently it is locked. When unlocked, this thing can do 45 kilometers per hour. To unlock it, simply long press the down button until a small rocket appears over here, and then continue as usual. So far, I've ridden roughly 300 kilometers with this bike, so I roughly understand how it performs in most types of situations. But to show you, I'll now perform some real-life tests, starting from paved flat roads going all the way up to steep off-roading. On a flat paved road, it rides extremely easy, even on eco or normal settings, and you can easily do 25, 30, maybe even 35 kilometers an hour. But you can also do over 40 if you're using the full throttle. On a slight incline, you'll usually need to turn it up to the sport setting and switch to a lower gear, but you can still very easily do about 15, maybe 20 kilometers an hour. On very steep paved roads, full throttle will stop working on its own. So what you need to do is turn to a low gear, turn on Turbo or Turbo Plus, and start pedaling. I think it really excels on gravel roads because it feels almost identical to riding on paved roads, except with a few more potholes. But you can also very easily ride it on very tough terrains because it's a fat tire bike. If you lower the tire pressure and set the front fork to the softest setting, you can pretty much ride on rocks 10, 20, 30 centimeters high and you won't even feel them. You can even ride it completely off-road if you feel like it. Another thing that I really love is that you can drive through some serious mud with this thing. Because it has so wide tires, you can literally stop in the middle of a large mud puddle and you won't get stuck at all. The only thing that I don't like about how it rides is that if you're doing a very steep section on full throttle and Turbo Plus, it overheats pretty quickly. After a while, a light will turn on, but you can still continue driving it. But if you keep on riding it after the light has turned on, at one moment it will stop completely and you'll need to wait a few moments until you can continue because the battery needs to cool down. That's why on roads this steep I avoid using full throttle. So would I recommend getting the Fiido Titan fat tire e-bike? Well, yeah, definitely. Overall, it seems really well built, and for the most part, I really have nothing bad to say about it. Because of the fat tires, the good suspension, and the powerful motor, you can ride it pretty much anywhere. It honestly feels like something in between a bicycle and a dirt bike. Here where I live, there are a ton of steep dirt mountain roads, so I honestly couldn't ask for anything better. But if you'll be using it for long distance bikepacking, then I would definitely recommend getting 2 chargers, because charging the battery takes at least 5 hours, and if you need to charge 3, that's 15 hours with 1 charger. This thing also isn't very cheap. The normal version with only 1 battery costs 1,699 euros, but the version that they sent me with 2 extra batteries costs 2,399 euros, which is quite a lot. Honestly, right now, with my current budget, this thing would definitely be out of my price range. If, however, I would have the finances for it, personally, I don't think that I would regret buying this thing, because it's so much fun to ride. It seems pretty well made, and overall, I really have nothing too bad to say about it. If you want to purchase it or know more information about it, I've linked out to it down in the video description, so make sure to check it out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in one of my next videos. Bye!